Welcome to Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, promoting prosperity and harmony to help you flourish in all areas of life. Join in as we explore the motivations and goals of real estate investors and how their ability to invest abundantly has provided them with the time and freedom to contribute to the world in a creative and thoughtful way. Now please welcome your host, Dr. Allen.
Welcome to Creekside Chats with Successful Multifamily Real Estate Investors. I'm your host, Dr. Allen. Today's guest holds a multifamily portfolio of about 1,000 doors. He's passionate about cultivating happy and healthy communities and works diligently to improve the lives of his tenants. He is using innovative strategies to maximize his investors' returns on his YouTube channel. He disseminates pertinent information and tips on investing money and money management, real estate, and current topics. Welcome, Hamza Ali.
Thank you, Dr. Allen. I'm really excited to be here.
Thank you for being here. Let's just start out where it is you started from.
It's an interesting story. So I actually started out in Dubai. I was in college when Dubai went through the real estate boom. Dubai, as you all know, did not always look like the way it does right now. All of that construction that you see is fairly recent. I would say in the past, probably 10 to 12 years is really when we've had that large economic boom that we did see Dubai becoming into. And that was all a strategy that they had to become the center of the business world, connecting the east to the west. And that was the vision that they had at the time. And at the time, I worked for a very large developer, one of the government subsidized developers, top four, and I was in sales. And what I did is I sold a bunch of real estate to international clients who came from all parts of the world. And it was an interesting time because my first move into real estate was seeing cash transactions. So Dubai is known for, at that time, was known for 100% cash transactions because they had built all this real estate, but they hadn't put any financing in place at the time. So we saw transactions happen where international buyers would come in and lug around suitcases of cash, just like a movie. And that was just the way real estate was bought at the time. So that is when I really got a glimpse and got to see how money moves and how you have to manage money and what the banking system is like or lack thereof. And so I always had my eye on becoming a real estate investor at some point. And just being around so many investors, I guess, influenced me at the time. Now, that being said, that was very good. But in 2007, we went through this huge recession and Dubai had a lot of speculative real estate. We had a lot of ground up projects that were not going to be developed by developers that had come from all across the world. And you could probably get real estate at 30 cents on the dollar. And it would be speculative. It would be something that may or may not get built, but it was an opportunity. A lot of people lost money. A lot of people left the country. I was one of the luckier people. I got to stay and still watch my first recession as it was happening. At that time, I was in my mid to late 20s, very aggressive in sales. Had lost all my money because what I would do is every time I would earn a commission, I would basically just put it back into some highly speculative real estate that would yield a high return. But all that, of course, as it wasn't going to happen in '07. Ended up losing most of my money. In 2008, 9, and 10, things were slow. 2010, things picked up a little bit. Real estate got a little better. I realized that I don't think I see real estate going to where it had gone, especially in Dubai at the time. So I decided to move to the US and I moved to Southern California out of all places. I took the little bit of money that I had, moved to SoCal and said, you know what, it's a beach city. The people are nice, just like Dubai. I'll adjust very well here. But then very quickly came to realize that the money I had was nowhere close to enough to invest in real estate in California as a whole, because California was quite expensive. And then from there, found myself in Houston, Texas. I bought a piece of real estate, was quickly able to develop it. There's a whole story. There's a whole backstory on how that was done anyways. Got that real estate developed, sold it, made a huge amount of money, and then realized that, oh my God, this is something that I love doing. And that was only 6 years ago. So in 6 years, came from almost nothing and now just under 1,000 doors under management. So it's been quite a journey for me.
Yeah, for sure. Quite a trajectory. It wasn't just luck and by golly. You certainly had developed a lot of experience in the real estate industry in Dubai and made a lot of good connections, and actually learned the trade from the ground up. So you were able to make some good decisions, and even though you ended up in California, realizing quickly that probably wasn't the best place to leverage your money. What took you to California in the first place, other than the fact it's a beautiful place to live and a wonderful climate?
So it's interesting you ask. I actually had some family in California, and they did business there for quite a while. And that's how I ended up there. They lived in Irvine, California, and told them that I wanted to come to the US to explore business opportunity. And they were like, you know what? Why don't you come stay with us for a while and see if you can find it? And so I did, and then quickly realized that there's no way I could do business there. It was just too expensive for me at the time. At the time, I'd come here, I'd say with a couple $100, and investing that into real estate would not have given me enough money to live. And that's just the way it was. So I quickly had to move.
And how did you discover Houston, and what took you to Houston?
Houston, Texas. So it's interesting because I have another aunt, and she lived in Katy, Texas. It's one of the suburbs of Houston. It's about an hour out, and she was a school teacher. And she called me up when I was in California one day, and she's like, you know what? I don't understand real estate. I don't know what you do exactly, but there's a lot of construction going on here. And why don't you come take a look? And I was like, you know what? I have nothing better to do. I might as well go and check it out. And you have to realize that I saw Dubai grow from nothing. I was 1 year old when I moved to Dubai in the early 80s. And I basically grew up there my entire life. So I saw that desert change into this fascinating empire. And when I moved to Katy, Texas, at that time, that zip code was the fastest growing zip code in all of the United States. And there was just so much construction going over there. I really felt like it was another Dubai for me, to where it was nothing. And now all of a sudden you have all this development happening. And I was like, okay, you know what? And it's affordable. That was the best part. It was affordable and I could do business. So I quickly looked at the opportunity, got myself a beater car, started driving, looking for land, purchased some land in Katy, Texas, and then went to the banks and tried to ask for leverage, which I did not get because I was an international person. I didn't have a social security number at the time. I didn't have 2 years of tax returns. So I had to learn how to basically use the land that I have as leverage or get leverage against the land without meeting certain criteria. And that is, I think, how I really got started in the syndication and investing process.
So how did you manage to leverage that property and get the financing that you needed?
I remember I'd say I bought 4 acres of land, by the way. So that was what I purchased at the time in Katy. And I was like, you know what? I want to develop this. I want to put some commercial real estate on it. I want to build office warehouses. That was my vision. And so I bought the land. I paid all cash for it. And that was all the money that I had. Went to the bank and I said, Mr. Bank, I have this land. I want to get leverage. And they're like, okay, perfect. Sit down. And I went to multiple banks. I probably went around 6 banks to learn the process and figure the system out. And what every bank told me is, no, you're not getting any leverage from us because you don't meet the criteria. And I was like, okay, what is this criteria you speak of? I have the land. Just take it and use it as leverage. I hear all these things about leverage, about the US and the opportunity to use leverage in real estate. And here I am, and nobody's giving me leverage. And the reason is that you needed 2 years of tax returns, you needed a social security number, and you needed credit. And I had neither one of all 3 of those. I had nothing. I had just come, I had applied for all those things, but I did not have the history or the background. And any international background you have does not count. It has to be either US, Canada, or affiliated countries. So it was interesting. I knocked around trying to figure out, because I spend all my money at this point. It's either make it work or go back home. So I talked to a banker at a local bank who introduced me to somebody and said, you know what, since you don't meet the criteria, let me introduce you to somebody who could potentially become your partner. And what you would have to do is you give them a percentage of your profits in exchange for them securing the loan for you. And I was like, wow, that's what a great idea, right? Somebody else helps me, secures the loan, has the credit, has the background, and all I need to do is actually do the work and sell the project. And when we do, we split profits. That's amazing. So I did that, ended up working out in my favor. Very nice gentleman. I actually am still in touch with him 6 years later. And although I don't use him anymore to secure debt, he's still a pretty cool guy. And I actually just spoke to him, I think a few days ago, just to check on him and make sure things were working out for him in the real estate space. So anyways, ended up developing the product, sold the project, he ended up taking half the money. So that was like, I want to say like about $1 million in profit. And that was the price I had to pay at the time. But the thing is that I always had my eye on the prize. And the prize was not the money at the time. The prize was using this strategy in order to grow and in order to leverage this strategy itself within itself and get to the next level of real estate investing. And that is, I think, how I ended up becoming a syndicator and being so comfortable being a syndicator. It was just because of that learning process. I think that also helped build a lot of confidence that I could take with me. While I was developing and in the process of selling that project, I actually bought a 24-unit apartment community at the same time. It was a very small apartment community. I learned a lot of lessons there. Did the same thing to where I partnered up. I think that apartment community, I don't think I really ended up making any money on the apartment community. I would say I made $0 for all the time that I put in. But it was a learning curve, and it was 24 units, and it was, at the time, I thought it was worth an education and for me to look into. I did the same thing, partnered up with someone. They actually ended up lending me all the money as well for that property. And all I had to do was manage it, sell it, and there would be a split of profits somewhere, which never happened, unfortunately, because there was a lot of profit on that deal. It's just that the profit that was made went to the person who brought in the equity. So I ended up with really nothing over there as well.
So how did you structure that first 24 apartment complex partnership? It was just two partners. Is that just you and the equity?
Yes. So it was a small deal. I remember I paid $38 a door, which was like $800,000 for the 24 units at the time. I will tell you this, I did not know what due diligence meant at the time. So I was from a different country. I don't know what I'm like. I was looking at it. It looked good. It made sense. And I was like, okay, let's buy it. No due diligence. Went into the deal. Very little due diligence. And then turned out to be a very rough deal for me. Like the tenant profile that I had to deal with was just very difficult. But it was all part of the education. And that, I think, really helped me understand deals better and really take my time in the due diligence process now. I remember it was like a early 60s construction. There was a lot of stuff in the underground that was broken, lots of turnover at the property. I had to file a lot of evictions, lots of damage as well inflicted in the property. And I really didn't understand if the eviction process or what things looked like or how to manage expectations with the tenants. And which is why I put in so much time in that deal that I feel like it was not worth the management. The only reason I was doing it was for the education. So let's dive back into the numbers. I bought that deal for $38 a door, $800,000. At the time, I thought that was a great price. Right. That was an amazing price. On one end, it faced the highway. When you get to this piece of real estate, it looked good. It looked really good when you drive up to the piece of property. It was just on the other side of the property is where the issues lied. And I had never driven that part. I had never explored the neighborhood, and I didn't understand school districts. I really didn't know how to use the information that was available out there. There's so much information that is available out there today that you can probably get on the internet for free. And I didn't have any of those tools at the time. All I had is my eyes and my gut. And both of them said that this was a good deal. I ended up selling. I ran that deal for 2 years before I realized that it was too small, and I don't think I was going to end up making any money in it. I ended up selling the deal for $55 a door. We purchased it at $800,000. We sold it for $1.2 million, minus the carry and a few expenses here and there. So maybe it was like 1.15. So $1,150,000 is probably what we netted. Cash on cash, that was 100%. But the investor who had put in the $300,000 of equity that I needed ended up walking away with the entire amount of the profit. I got very little of that. But what I did get was the skill set, the education, and I was still determined. And the next deal I did was larger deals. Of course, I started buying 60, 80, 100 unit deals and then moved up the food chain from there.
Yeah, so a lot was learned there. Certainly a lot about due diligence, a lot about tenants and how to manage tenants, a lot certainly about renovating properties, a lot learned about location and communities, and probably a whole lot learned about how to actually structure partnerships and deals in the first place so that you're getting more out of it than just education. which is, of course, invaluable in some respects, but you put a lot of time, effort, and energy into that and probably deserved a little bit more than just education from that. But it was good for your partner. Have you done deals with your partner since then?
I have not. I'm still in touch with them. It's just that it's all about managing expectations. And I think the expectation at that time was that, okay, you get to keep all the money and I'll do all the work just for the education. But once I felt like I was competent, I really didn't see that partnership succeeding moving forward because I was no longer in the need of the education. So I structured new partnership. And the interesting thing is, as I was doing all this, as I was building my first project and managing the 24 units, I was networking a lot. And I was out, I would say, at least 4 times a day networking at local events and talking to people and bringing them to my communities and showing them the product. I had accumulated at that time, I'd say at least over 100 investors, potential investors, right? For future deals. And I would keep in touch with and build that relationship. I didn't have anything to offer them just yet because remember, I needed those 2 years of tax returns in order to be able to get my own leverage.
Right.
And until I didn't have them, I really didn't have a product to sell. I was kind of tied down, and it was the only thing I could do is just build strong and good relationships, which is what I did, which is what I once I qualified and the first lender told me, you know what, you're good to go, let's do it. You have the experience, you have the 2 years of tax returns, you seem to have okay credit, we'll give you the loan. That was it. I really didn't feel like I needed a partner beyond that point. What ended up happening is I became the GP at that point, which means I became the general partner. I became the person who structured the deal and who took control of the deal, managed the deal, and all I really needed at that point was limited partners, which I quickly learned were very readily available just based on the experience and the work that I had put in over the 2 years that I was here in the US. There was no lack of. I remember my first deal, I ended up raising $620,000 in 3 days. It was like it was almost a $3 million deal, and we needed about $620,000 in equity. And I was able to raise that in 3 days. It was no problem. It was the first time I've ever raised money from people. I had just put in so much time prior that I feel like those relationships were like, it was difficult for people to tell me no.
Yeah. Interesting how you have put all that together and have taken all of your experiences, your international experiences, your experiences from developing from the ground up on your first deal there in the Houston area, going to multifamily, getting a great education there, even though you made no profit on that first deal, you earned a whole lot. And you weren't just wasting your time on that project. While you were learning how to manage and renovate a project, you were also spending a lot of very valuable time networking, which is really what ultimately paid off. Talk to us about your most valuable experience you've had since going into the real estate industry here in the Houston.
Yep. Most valuable experience is probably a lesson learned. And the lesson learned is do your due diligence. Due diligence is a very important component. And I think if done correctly, it's very difficult for you to go wrong. Now, with the larger deals, what ends up happening is the lenders will also send you a due diligence packet. So there will be a required amount of minimum requirements that you have to meet, minimum standards that you have to meet. That does end up helping you. So if the bank says, hey, Hamza, this is not looking to be a good deal, I've seen a lot of ego investors go against the lender and just say, no, you know what, we like the deal. Your due diligence is not good enough. We're going to do our own. I would say just consider and look into what your lenders are telling you. And it can never hurt because they're there to help you. They're there to make sure that this is a sound investment. And when you're a syndicator like me, which means you have investor money invested in all of these deals, you could use all the help you can get probably. That would be the most valuable, I guess, piece of knowledge that I have today after doing this for about 6 years here in the US. The best deal that I've done so far is we've made a 3x cash on cash return in about 2.5 years on one of our investments. I've done 11 funds, which means we've done 11 individual deals, and one of them, just happened to be a great deal. I think we made money when we actually bought that deal because we bought it so far below market. And those deals are available. I know a lot of people say that, hey, we can't find deals. You just have to keep mining. You have to mine the internet. You have to mine your connections. You have to be on the top of your top 5 city brokers call list. And the way you get there is times like now, actually, when other people are sitting back and not making a move. What you want to do is you want to start making calls, start building those relationships. I think actually this is probably the best time, not to buy, but to build. And what I mean by build is build those relationships, because other people are sitting on the sidelines just waiting. And I think this is the best time to catch a big time broker in your local area and just reach out to them and constantly reach out to them so that they remember you, so that when the market is super hot again in the multifamily space, guess what? You're going to be first on their mind, and you may get a chance at investing in a below market deal. And I think it's totally worth it. All you have to do is build a genuine relationship. And for that, you could be rewarded if you get an undervalued deal that otherwise there would have been no way for you to get to.
So you're finding most of your deals through brokers, and you've built broker relationships in order to actually find those deals.
Yeah. So there's 2 things that I will tell everybody that have really added a lot of value. And that way I'm confident that I'm getting the best deals. I always ask for my brokers to invest in my deals. And those are just the kind of relationships that I have. My relationships are so good that all my brokers are my friends, and we hang out and talk about things other than business and selling and buying. And when they do bring me a deal, just that cherry on top for me is when they tell me, what, I'm going to invest in this deal too. It looks like it's a great deal, so let's do it. And that builds credibility. If you think about it, they're guaranteeing they're not only guaranteeing the purchase of the deal, they're guaranteeing the sale of the deal as well, because they're invested in it. If you look at it from their point of view, it's a win-win situation for them. It's a win-win situation. It's actually a win-win for everybody who's investing in the deal, right? So these are things I think that relationships build that just doing business may not.
Good advice. And we are at the end of our time here together. And I appreciate you being on the show here today. Before we go, just share with our viewers and listeners how they can connect with you.
Yeah, you can connect with me via my YouTube channel. It's H-Town Hamza. And I post entrepreneurial and real estate investing advice on there quite often. And all my contact details are on the channel.
Thank you for being on the program today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. It was good to be here.
Thank you for joining us on Creekside Chats with Successful Real Estate Investors, brought to you by Steed Talker Capital. For more information, as well as access to our free ebook on enhancing your well-being through real estate investing, be sure to connect with us at steedtalker.com. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steed Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine and enhance the humane treatment of horses worldwide. Steed Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. Connect with us at steedtalker.com.